You have 60 days. Maybe 90 if you're lucky. That is the window between where we are right now in February 2026 and the point where the 10 items I am about to reveal become impossible to acquire at any price. Not difficult, not expensive, impossible. And the reason nobody is talking about this is because most preppers are still operating on 2020 timelines when supply chains were merely stressed. They have not updated their threat assessment for the current reality where China is conducting daily Taiwan Strait incursions, where Russia just mobilized another 300,000 conscripts, where Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz for 16 hours last week before international pressure forced reopening, and where the U.S. just deployed carrier groups to 3 simultaneous theaters. These are not distant storm clouds. This is a hurricane making landfall. And if you're still telling yourself there is time, if you're still waiting for confirmation, if you are still thinking you will prep when things get serious, you have already lost. Drop ready in the comments if you think you are already prepared. Drop starting if you know you need to move now. Because what comes next will determine whether you are positioned correctly for what is coming or whether you become one of the millions competing for scraps when shelves empty. And I need you to understand something fundamental before we start. This is not fear-mongering. This is pattern recognition. Every major war in modern history followed the same preparation curve. Diplomatic tensions escalate. Proxy conflicts intensify. Supply chains begin reorienting for war production. Consumer goods become secondary priorities. Strategic materials get diverted. And then suddenly, seemingly overnight, everything civilians need disappears because industrial capacity shifted to military production and imports stopped flowing. We are currently at the supply chain reorientation phase. You have one narrow window to acquire what you need before we hit the diversion phase. After that, it is too late. Let me show you what too late looks like. 1939, Nazi Germany invades Poland. Britain and France had months of warning. They watched Austria. They watched Czechoslovakia. They watched the Rhineland remilitarization. And British civilians did not start panic buying until September 1st when war was declared. By September 4th, 3 days later, London grocery stores were empty. Not low, empty, because everyone waited for official confirmation before acting. The people who prepared in January and February of 1939, when the pattern was obvious, had 6 to 8 months of supplies before scarcity hit. The people who waited until September had 3 days. Which group do you want to be? Item number 1 is prescription medications, not antibiotics, not fish medicine, your actual prescription medications that you take daily. If you are on blood pressure medication, diabetes medication, thyroid medication, antidepressants, or any chronic disease management drug, you need to get a 90-day supply immediately, and then work every angle to extend that to 6 months. Here's why. 80% of active pharmaceutical ingredients are manufactured in China and India. Finished drugs are manufactured globally, but depend on those precursors. The moment China enters direct conflict with Taiwan, pharmaceutical supply chains collapse instantly, not gradually, instantly, because shipping stops, because precursor exports stop, because China has explicitly stated they will weaponize pharmaceutical dependency. The chemistry is specific. Most modern pharmaceuticals are complex molecules requiring multi-step synthesis with precursors from multiple sources. You cannot just make them domestically overnight. You need the chemical feedstocks, the synthesis equipment, the quality control systems, and the trained personnel. The U.S. is almost none of this for generic medications because it was all offshore decades ago for cost efficiency. That efficiency becomes a catastrophic vulnerability the moment supply lines cut. And they will cut. Taiwan produces 60% of advanced semiconductors, but also sits on the primary shipping route for Asian pharmaceutical exports. Blockade Taiwan, and you blockade medication simultaneously. The practical application is uncomfortable. You call your doctor and you lie. You tell them you are traveling internationally for 3 months. You tell them you lost your medications. You tell them whatever story gets you a fresh prescription while insurance will still cover it. You go to multiple pharmacies if necessary. You use Canadian online pharmacies if domestic options fail. You do whatever it takes to get a 6-month buffer because after conflict starts, you are not getting refills. Pharmacies will be empty within a week as people panic fill prescriptions and supply chains freeze. The people who die first in prolonged conflicts are not the ones in combat zones. They are the diabetics without insulin, the cardiac patients without blood pressure medication, the asthmatics without inhalers. Do not be that statistic. But medications mean nothing if you cannot preserve other fundamentals. Which brings us to item number 2, water filtration systems. Not water, water filtration. Specifically, multi-stage systems with replacement filters and backup methods. Most preppers store water, 5-gallon jugs, water bricks, bathtub bladders, and that is fine for immediate needs. But you cannot store enough water for prolonged conflict. You need filtration capability, and the systems you need are manufactured overseas using components that will become unavailable. Here is a supply chain vulnerability. Quality water filters use activated carbon, ceramic elements, hollow fiber membranes, and ion exchange resins. These are produced in specialized facilities primarily in Asia and Europe. The replacement filter market depends on continuous imports. When war disrupts shipping, replacement filters vanish. The filtration systems themselves vanish because they are not prioritized for air freight like military components. You have maybe 60 days before big box retailers sell out and online inventory depletes. After that, prices go exponential if you can find them at all. The specific recommendation is this: buy a Berkey or a Lexapure Gravity filter with 6 extra filter sets. Buy a Sawyer Mini for every family member as backup. Buy Pool Shock calcium hypochlorite for chemical disinfection as tertiary backup. Total cost is approximately $600. That gives you multi-year water purification capability with redundancy at 3 different technology levels. You are not buying water. You are buying the capability to make any water source safe indefinitely. That capability becomes worth more than gold when municipal water fails, and bottled water disappeared months ago. But water and medications are obvious. Let me show you what most people are missing. Item number 3 is soap, not hand sanitizer, not body wash, bar soap. Specifically, traditional lye-based bar soap like Ivory, Kirk's, or Dr. Bronner's. You need 50 to 100 bars. This sounds insane until you understand the supply chain for modern soap products. Modern liquid soaps and body washes depend on complex surfactant chemistry, preservatives, and fragrances produced through multinational supply chains. The bottles are plastic requiring petroleum feedstocks and manufacturing capacity. The whole production and distribution system is optimized for just-in-time delivery with minimal warehousing. When war disrupts petroleum availability and plastic production capacity shifts to military priorities, soap products vanish, not slowly, within weeks. Bar soap made from animal fats or vegetable oils is old technology that can be produced domestically, but retail distribution still depends on supply chains that freeze under war conditions. The hygiene implications are catastrophic. People think soap is about cleanliness. Soap is about disease prevention. In collapse scenarios, waterborne and fecal oral transmission, diseases kill more people than violence. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery, hepatitis A. These are preventable through basic hygiene practices centered on soap use. Without soap, hand contamination leads to food contamination, leads to disease outbreaks that kill entire communities. You know what stopped the Black Death from killing everyone? Not medicine. Hygiene practices, including soap use. The practical math is straightforward. 1 bar of soap lasts approximately 2 weeks for 1 person with reasonable use. 50 bars per person provides 2 years of basic hygiene capability. At $1 per bar, that is $50 per person for disease prevention. That is worth infinitely more than the cost. You buy it now while it is cheap and available. You store it in dry conditions where it actually improves with age as moisture content decreases. And you have hygiene security that 99% of preppers completely overlooked. But hygiene requires more than soap, which brings us to item number 4. Bleach, not fancy disinfectants. Regular sodium hypochlorite bleach in concentrated form. You need 10 to 20 gallons. This will confuse people because bleach technically expires. The sodium hypochlorite degrades to sodium chloride and oxygen over time. But this degradation is predictable and manageable. 6% household bleach degrades approximately 10% per year stored at room temperature. After 2 years, your 6% bleach is closer to 4.8%. It is still highly functional for water purification and surface disinfection. You just adjust dosing. The strategic value of bleach is immense. You use it for water disinfection at a ratio of 8 drops per gallon for clear water, 16 drops for cloudy water. Wait 30 minutes, and you have microbiologically safe water. You use it for surface disinfection at 1 tablespoon per gallon of water for general cleaning, 1/4 cup per gallon for blood or fecal contamination. You use it for laundry sanitation. You use it for treating contaminated equipment. Bleach is a broad-spectrum oxidizer that destroys bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protozoa through chemical disruption. It is one of the most versatile disinfection tools ever developed, and it is cheap. Here is why you buy now. Bleach production depends on chlor-alkali plants that require massive electrical input and saltwater feedstocks. These plants serve multiple industries, including plastics, water treatment, and chemical manufacturing. During war, capacity gets prioritized for military and municipal needs. Consumer bleach becomes low priority. And because bleach cannot be stored long-term by retailers due to degradation, there is no deep inventory. When supply chains hiccup, bleach disappears. You need to build your stockpile now, while it is $3 per gallon. Do not wait until it is $30 or unavailable. Pause here. We have covered 4 items: prescription medications, water filtration, bar soap, bleach. Total investment so far is under $1,000. We have addressed chronic disease management, water security, hygiene, and disinfection. Most people quit right here because they are impatient or because their brain cannot process urgency without visible crisis. If you're still watching, comment "still here" right now. Because items 5 through 10 are where we address the vulnerabilities that kill prepared people who thought they covered everything. Item number 5 is batteries, not rechargeable batteries. Alkaline disposable batteries in AA, AAA, and D sizes. You need 200 of each size. This sounds excessive until you understand the supply chain. Battery production depends on zinc, manganese dioxide, and steel, all of which are commoditized metals sourced globally. China controls 55% of global zinc refining and 40% of manganese production. Battery assembly happens primarily in Asia. The entire supply chain is designed for steady consumer demand with minimal warehousing because batteries have shelf lives and holding costs. When war starts, battery production capacity shifts to military use. Batteries power everything from radios to night vision to medical equipment to vehicle systems. Military demand consumes most production. Consumer markets get shortages immediately. And because batteries are heavy relative to value, they do not get prioritized for emergency air freight. You have approximately 60 days before retail inventories deplete and do not replenish. The application is strategic. Batteries power your lights, radios, medical devices, and communications equipment. Rechargeable batteries are great if you have reliable power for charging. When the grid is down or unreliable, disposables are your backup. Alkaline batteries stored at room temperature or cooler maintain 80% capacity for 10 years. You are building a decade-long power reserved for critical systems. 200 batteries of each common size provides approximately 100 to 200 hours of runtime, depending on device draw. That is months of tactical lighting and communications capability. Real talk. How many of you have $50 of batteries stored but $500 of gear that requires batteries to function? Drop a hand emoji if this describes you. You are not alone. People optimize gear purchases and ignore consumables. Gear is useless without power. Power requires batteries. Batteries require foresight to stockpile before scarcity. Item number 6 is fire-starting equipment, specifically disposable lighters in bulk. Not fancy survival lighters, not ferro rods, disposable Bic lighters. You need 100, at 50 cents to $1 each. That is $100 for a decade of fire-starting reliability. Let me explain why this is critical. Fire is not optional in survival scenarios. Fire purifies water. Fire enables cooking. Fire provides warmth. Fire offers psychological comfort that prevents mental breakdown. Fire signal for rescue, and the ability to create fire reliably under adverse conditions separates people who survive from people who die of exposure or waterborne illness. Lighters are the most efficient fire-starting tool ever invented. They provide instant flame with minimal skill requirement. They work in conditions that defeat matches, ferro rods, and primitive methods. A single Bic lighter provides approximately 3,000 lights before exhaustion. 100 lighters provide 300,000 lights. That is fire security for life. The supply chain vulnerability is simple. Disposable lighters are manufactured primarily in China using butane, plastic, and piezoelectric ignition components. These are low-margin consumer products within distribution networks. During conflict, manufacturing capacity shifts to higher priority items. Plastic becomes military supply priority. Butane gets diverted to industrial uses. Lighters vanish from retail. And because they are regulated as hazardous materials due to flammability, stockpiling and shipping becomes difficult once demand spikes. You buy now while they are 50 cents at any gas station. You buy 200 if you have space. You store them in cool conditions away from direct heat. And you have fire security while others are struggling with damp matches and fail ferro rod technique. But fire requires fuel. Which brings us to item number 7, ammunition, not firearms. Ammunition, specifically common calibers in your existing firearms. 9mm, 5.56, 12 gauge, whatever you already own. You need 1,000 rounds per firearm minimum. This is not about preparing for combat. This is about understanding market dynamics during crisis. Ammunition is the perfect storm of supply vulnerability. Primers are made from lead stiffnate and require specialized facilities. Powder is nitrocellulose, requiring controlled manufacturing. Brass requires copper and zinc, both globally traded commodities. Bullets require lead or copper. Final assembly happens in specialized facilities with long setup times. The entire supply chain is capacity constrained during normal times. During crisis, civilian ammunition becomes impossible to acquire at any price. What I am about to say will anger anti-gun activists and gun control advocates. If you are ready for uncomfortable economic truth they deliberately ignore, hit the like button right now. Here it is. Ammunition is not just defensive capability. Ammunition is currency. In every modern conflict where government currency collapsed, ammunition became trade medium. Sarajevo siege, 1 box of 9mm traded for 1 week of food. Argentine collapse, shotgun shells became preferred barter. Ammunition has universal value, indefinite storage life, standardized units, and cannot be counterfeited. It is better currency than gold because it has immediate utility and everyone understands value. You do not need ammunition because you are planning to shoot people. You need ammunition because it represents store value that holds better than cash during currency collapse, and because it provides defensive capability if required. 1,000 rounds of common caliber costs approximately $400 to $600 today. After conflict starts, if you can find it, expect 3 to 5 times that price. Before conflict, you buy at normal prices. You store in airtight containers in cool, dry conditions. Properly stored ammunition lasts 50-plus years. You are not buying bullets. You are buying insurance and barter currency simultaneously. But defense and currency mean nothing if you cannot maintain health. Which brings us to item number 8, over-the-counter medications. Specifically, ibuprofen, acetaminophen, antihistamines, antidiarrheals, and antibiotic ointment. You need economy-sized bottles of each. Total cost is under $100. Total value during scarcity is immeasurable. Here is what people do not understand about OTC medications. They are not sold at pharmacies. They are manufactured in pharmaceutical facilities using the same global supply chains as prescription drugs. India produces 40% of global generic OTC medications. China produces 60% of active ingredients. When those supply chains break, OTC medications vanish simultaneously with prescriptions. The people who die in collapse scenarios often die from minor ailments that escalate due to lack of basic medical treatment. a headache that prevents sleep, that degrades cognitive function, that leads to mistakes that cause injury, diarrhea that causes dehydration, that causes electrolyte imbalance, that causes cardiac arrest, allergic reactions that cause airways to swell closed, all preventable with OTC medications that cost dollars when available and are worthless when they are not because they do not exist. The specific buying list is this: ibuprofen 1,000 tablets, acetaminophen 1,000 tablets, diphenhydramine antihistamine 500 tablets, loperamide antidiarrheal 200 tablets, triple antibiotic ointment 10 tubes, hydrocortisone cream 10 tubes. These address pain, fever, inflammation, allergic reactions, gastrointestinal distress, wound infection prevention, and skin conditions. You store them in dark, cool, dry conditions. They remain effective for years past printed expiration dates. And you have medical capability that saves lives when hospitals are not accessible. But medications treat symptoms. They do not address nutrition. Which brings us to item number 9, and this will surprise people. Multivitamins. Specifically, high-quality multivitamins with minerals in dark glass bottles. You need a 3-year supply per person. This sounds crazy until you understand nutritional biochemistry during prolonged stress. When diet becomes limited, when fresh foods become unavailable, when you are operating under chronic stress, your micronutrient requirements increase while your intake decreases. This creates deficiency diseases that killed more people throughout history than acute starvation. Scurvy from vitamin C deficiency, beriberi from vitamin B1 deficiency, pellagra from niacin deficiency, rickets from vitamin D deficiency. These are not historical curiosities. These are current threats the moment your diet narrows to shelf-stable staples without fresh food supplementation. Multivitamins are insurance against deficiency diseases. They do not replace whole foods. They fill gaps. And the gap between marginal nutrition and deficiency disease is often the difference between maintaining immune function and succumbing to opportunistic infections. A 3-year supply costs approximately $100. That is $33 per year to prevent diseases that disable or kill. The value proposition is overwhelming. If you understood that vitamins are not supplements for optimal health, but insurance against deficiency disease during nutritional stress, you are smarter than 95% of preppers who ignore this completely. But can you explain which vitamin deficiency causes night blindness? Comment your answer. I respond the most accurate explanations because I want you thinking about mechanisms. The answer is vitamin A. Retinol is required for rhodopsin synthesis in rod cells that enable low-light vision. Deficiency causes progressive night blindness that makes navigation and security impossible after sunset. This is why liver, which is dense in vitamin A, was traditionally valued in survival situations. Multivitamins provide synthetic retinol that prevents this and dozens of other deficiency cascades. Item number 10 is the one most people never consider until it is too late. Cash, physical currency, small bills. You need $2,000 minimum in 20s, 10s, 5s, and 1s. Not in your bank account, in your physical possession, in a secure location. Let me explain why this contradicts conventional prepper wisdom about precious metals and barter items. When crisis starts, there's a window before currency completely collapses where cash is still accepted but electronic systems are unreliable. ATMs go offline due to power failures or network disruptions. Banks limit withdrawals. Credit card processing fails. But for days or weeks, merchants still accept cash for essential items because it is familiar and they have change-making capability. This is the window where having physical currency allows you to acquire last-minute necessities, while everyone else is locked out of their bank accounts. The historical pattern is consistent. Initial crisis creates electronic payment disruption. People with cash can still transact. As crisis deepens, currency value drops, but acceptance continues because alternatives have not emerged. Eventually, barter systems develop or new currency is established. But that transition takes months. During the early phase, cash is king. The people with physical currency can opportunistically acquire scarce resources. The people dependent on cards and apps are locked out. The denomination strategy is critical. Large bills are harder to spend because merchants cannot make change. Small bills allow precise transactions without overpaying. 20s are useful for larger purchases. 10s and 5s are versatile. 1s are essential for small transactions and tips that maintain goodwill. You diversify denominations to maximize transaction flexibility. $2,000 in mixed small bills fits in a shoebox and provides transaction capability that credit cards cannot match when systems fail. Now, let me synthesize these 10 items into a coherent action plan. Prescription medications address chronic disease management. Water filtration provides potable water indefinitely. Soap enables hygiene and disease prevention. Bleach provides disinfection and backup water treatment. Batteries power essential equipment. Lighters provide fire-starting security. Ammunition provides defense and barter currency. OTC medications treat common ailments. Multivitamins prevent deficiency diseases. Cash enables transactions during electronic system failure. Together, these 10 items address the gap between initial crisis and long-term survival systems. They are the bridge items that keep you functional while establishing sustainable routines. Total cost for all 10 categories is approximately $3,000 per person. That is less than most people spend on entertainment in 6 months. That is less than one used car. That is less than most medical emergencies cost out of pocket. And the return of survival capability during the most dangerous transition period when most people fail. Not because they lack resources, because they lack the specific resources that matter during initial collapse. Here is what makes February 2026 critical. We are past the early warning phase. China conducted 19 Taiwan straight incursions in January alone. Russia mobilized 300,000 troops in the last 90 days. Iran-Israel tensions are at highest levels since 1979. The U.S. is running simultaneous carrier deployments for the first time since World War II. North Korea is conducting weekly missile tests. These are not random events. These are coordinated preparations. The global system is moving toward conflict, and the economic indicators confirm it. Shipping insurance for Asian routes increased 40% in January. Container spot rates from China tripled. European natural gas futures are pricing in supply disruption assumptions. Wheat futures hit 8-year highs. These are not media stories. These are market movements reflecting institutional positioning for conflict. The smart money is already moving. You need to move now while you still can. What I am about to say will make mainstream preppers uncomfortable and pessimists angry, but it needs to be said. Optimism without preparation is delusion. Pessimism without action is surrender. The correct mindset is sober realism paired with decisive implementation. You acknowledge the threat. You prepare rationally. Then you continue living your life with confidence because you did what was necessary. You do not obsess. You do not panic. You prepare, then you proceed. The action plan for this week is specific. Monday, call your doctor and get prescription refills. Tuesday, order water filtration systems online. Wednesday, buy soap, bleach, and batteries at local retailers. Thursday, acquire ammunition at local shops or online. Friday, purchase OTC medications and multivitamins. Saturday, withdraw $2,000 in small bills. This entire list is accomplishable in 1 week with approximately $3,000 per person. If you have a family of 4, that is $12,000. If you have limited budget, you prioritize. Medications first, water second, hygiene third. Work down the list as budget allows. And you do this quietly. You do not post on social media. You do not tell neighbors. You do not broadcast your preparations. Operational security matters. The moment conflict starts, the prepared become targets for the unprepared. You do not advertise. You acquire, you store, you shut up. The people who survive are not the ones with the most gear. They are the ones who prepared competently and maintain low profiles. Let me give you the reality check you need to hear. These 10 items do not guarantee survival. Nothing does. War is chaos. Randomness kills prepared and unprepared alike. But preparation shifts probability dramatically in your favor. It gives you options when others have none. It provides security when others are desperate. It transforms you from reactive victim to proactive survivor. That difference is not minor. That difference is everything. You now know more about critical preparation timing than 99% of people watching geopolitical news and doing nothing. That is your advantage. Most people will wait for confirmation. Most people will wait until crisis is undeniable. By then, these items are gone. You have 60 to 90 days maximum. Use them. Honest question. What is the one item from this list you are acquiring this week? Comment below. I read every single one. And if you think I am wrong about the timeline, if you think there is still plenty of time, good. Drop your reasoning. Best comment gets pinned, and a detailed response with sources. Because I want you thinking critically about threat assessment. I want you making informed decisions, not following blindly. But I also want you acting on evidence, not hope. If this video changed your preparation timeline, share it with one person who needs this information. Not for me, for them. Because the people you care about deserve to have the same information you have. They deserve the chance to prepare before the window closes. Do not keep this to yourself. Share it. They will either thank you or they will ignore you. Either way, you did what you could. The next video drops in 3 days, and it covers the biggest mistake preppers make after acquiring supplies. The mistake that gets them killed in the first week despite having everything they need. Hit the bell so you do not miss it. Your preparation strategy depends on understanding this. Stay informed, stay prepared, or stay dependent on systems that are currently failing in real time. Your choice. But understand that choosing an action is still a choice. It is a choice to be vulnerable. It is a choice to hope that systems hold despite overwhelming evidence they are breaking. It is a choice to trust that someone else will save you when crisis hits. I cannot make that choice for you. I can only show you what the evidence says and what history teaches. The rest is your decision. One more thing. See that progress bar? Not quite done yet. 99% leave before this final piece. The 1% who stay get the insider information most people miss. The single biggest supply chain vulnerability that determines who eats and who starves in the first 90 days. Comment insider if you are still here. Welcome to the 1%. The vulnerability is cooking fuel, propane, butane, charcoal, wood. Everyone focuses on food storage. Almost nobody thinks about how they will cook that food when electricity and natural gas are unavailable. Propane is perfect, but the supply chain depends on petrochemical infrastructure and continuous distribution. When war disrupts refineries and transportation, propane availability drops to 0 within weeks. Butane camp stoves are convenient, but butane is even more supply vulnerable. Charcoal depends on production facilities and transportation. Wood is renewable but requires processing tools and dry storage space. The solution is multi-fuel redundancy acquired now. You buy 2 20-pound propane tanks and keep them full. That provides approximately 40 hours of cooking on a standard 2-burner camp stove. You buy 50 pounds of lump charcoal and a basic charcoal grill. That provides 100+ cooking sessions. You buy a 2-burner butane camp stove and 20 butane canisters as backup. You acquire an axe and saw for processing wood if needed. Total cost is approximately $300. Total cooking capability is 6 months minimum if used strategically. But here is the critical part nobody thinks about. You practice now. You cook a meal on propane this weekend. You cook on charcoal next weekend. You figure out heat management, cooking times, and fuel efficiency while grocery stores are open and mistakes do not matter. The people who try to learn cooking on alternative fuels during crisis waste fuel through inexperience and create dangerous situations through ignorance. You learn now while it is safe. You build skill while it is optional. Then when it becomes necessary, you execute from competence rather than desperation. Cooking fuel is the hidden vulnerability. You can have a year of food and starve because you cannot cook dried beans. You can have rice and eat it raw because you have no fuel. You can have the best stockpile in your neighborhood and lose it all to food poisoning because you could not properly cook contaminated food sources. Fuel is not optional. Fuel is survival critical. And almost nobody is thinking about it until they need it and it is gone. This is a pattern with every item I have shown you. They seem minor until they are essential. They seem available until they are not. They seem affordable until prices explode. And by the time most people realize they needed them, the window closed. You've been given the list. You've been shown the timeline. You have been provided the reasoning. The only question remaining is whether you act on it. I want to be clear about something. I gain nothing from you preparing except the satisfaction of knowing I provided actionable information to people willing to use it. I do not sell any of these products. I am not affiliated with any brands. I am not making money from your purchases. What I am doing is sharing pattern recognition from studying hundreds of historical conflicts, from analyzing current supply chains, from understanding how systems fail under stress. This is not speculation. This is documented reality applied to current conditions, and the current conditions are screaming that we are in the final preparation window, not the beginning, not the middle, the final window before availability collapses. You can acknowledge this and act. You can dismiss this and hope, or you can save this video and come back when everything I said becomes undeniable. By then, you will wish you had acted. Do not be that person. Be the person who saw the pattern, trusted the analysis, and moved decisively. February 2026 is your last normal month. March will be different. April will be worse. By summer, we will either be in direct conflict or so close that preparation is impossible. This is not what I want. This is what the evidence indicates. And whether you believe it or not, your preparation level should reflect the possibility that the analysis is correct. Because if I am wrong, you spent $3,000 on useful supplies you will eventually use anyway. If I am right, you position your family to survive what is coming. The risk-reward calculation is overwhelmingly in favor of preparation. Do it now, not tomorrow, not next week. Now, start with the most critical items and work down the list. Your window is closing. Act accordingly.